Hello and welcome to The Rest is Politics US with me, Katty K.
And I'm Anthony Scaramucci. Well, Katty, you start. Ladies first. Go ahead. What do you think happened?
Look, we've just watched the two vice presidential nominees, JD Vance and Tim Walz. They've been battling it out in their first and only television debate. It was about 90 minutes long. And since Donald Trump so far hasn't agreed to another round with Kamala Harris, it looks like this is going to be the last big opportunity for either of these campaigns to get their principles out there and make an impact before Election Day. We can talk later about how much impact we think the vice presidential debates have had in history and how much we think this one might have. I actually think this one might have more than it generally does. But look, I think this was my overarching impression was that JD Vance is a skilled debater, as we had expected. He showed up and decided to be Mr. Nice JD Vance and not the more aggressive, acerbic JD Vance that we've been seeing over the last 3 weeks or so, over the last few weeks in television interviews. And Tim Walz, who the campaign had already kind of put out there, is not as experienced as JD Vance in debating, seemed very nervous at the beginning, kind of mixed up quite a lot of his words, got better as the debate went on, but wasn't the kind of confident coach that we've been seeing in the rally. So I mean, I guess, if you're going to put it colloquially, JD Vance was not the kind of Rottweiler that we've seen in television interviews, and Tim Walz wasn't the kind of folksy, charming, confident coach that we've been seeing in political rallies. So if this was just purely a contest between these two, I think you'd have to give JD Vance the win on that one.
Okay. So, I mean, what I love about doing this podcast with you is that it's objective. That could be the BBC journalist in you. I don't know. I have to be objective. I wanted Walz to win, but he did not win that debate, and so we have to be very objective as to why he didn't win that debate. So I'm just going to list off 4 quick things, and then I'd like to ask you a few questions.
Great, we've already got a list going. I love it.
I do. I was writing it while I was watching it. So he was very unfocused. He got very nervous. Also, he had a glare going. There was a side piece. Remember, if you're going to go into a debate on national television, it's not just what you're saying to the camera. It's where you're looking and how you're looking. Okay. Vice President Harris practiced all that. She was flawless in the silence and the body language piece of this. He looked lost. He did not look as lost as Joe Biden, but he did look lost.
Okay. I mean, so people are going to be like, this was not June the 27th.
People are going to be mad at me, but he was not ready for the debate. He was not ready for the earnestness that Vance was presenting. There were 4 things that he did, I think, that were ridiculous. And whoever prepped him either didn't know how to prep him or he didn't prepare for the debate, because you have to be ready for the Tiananmen Square question. Have to be ready for it. He spent 90 seconds in dead air, and you could feel screeching in the room. So, but he got better. He got better in the middle of the debate. He got better. This is my last 2 points. Then I'm going to ask you a question. He got better with gun control. He got better with health care. He got better with women's reproductive rights. He also got better. He did something that Donald Trump is not going to like. And that is, you're saying that, and I agree with you, but that's not what your top of the ticket candidate is saying. That's not what he's saying. And he split Vance 3 or 4 times. And I'm going to tell you that Vance did well enough for Trump to pretend that he liked it, but he really is not going to like it. Okay. And I'll say this before I ask you this question. Both of those guys did way better than Donald Trump did on September the 10th. So, but my question is JD Vance too young to be president of the United States or too young to be vice president? Yes, he's a terrific debater. If we were at the Yale debating Oxford or debating one of your fancy pants schools over there and he won the debate, yes. But is he too young? Because that was my feeling looking at him. And then secondarily, what does Walz do from here?
Look, so I think a couple of things. We're getting lots of people are already texting in. Thank you for your questions and comments. a lot of them not happy with our analysis, saying that Walz definitely won it. I think that's a tricky one to argue, actually. I think there's a counter argument. I was texting all through this with a Republican congressperson, a Democratic congressperson, and a Democratic senator. I mean, a Democratic strategist. And I was kind of had an ongoing text the whole way through this. And one of the strategists pointed out that although Walz came across as nervous, his kind of folksy manner may have actually been more appealing to audiences and seemed more human, and that kind of Vance had a kind of slight smirk about him. And maybe that gets to the youth thing that you're talking about, when he was looking at Tim Walz, and that he always had this kind of slight half smile about him. I think it's that JD Vance came into this debate deciding he was going to be disarmingly personable, which right from the beginning, by the way, he kind of thanked Tim Walz right at the top for being there. He thanked the moderators. He was very polite to the moderators. He wasn't rude to Tim Walz. I was really struck. One of the things that struck me was the number of times actually both of them agreed with each other and said, I think you're right. Because it wasn't just that Tim Walz was trying to split JD Vance from Donald Trump. JD Vance was also trying to split Tim Walz from Kamala Harris at various points. And neither of them, I think, did a really good job of, in those moments, defending their principles. I mean, what is the point of a vice presidential debate? The point of a vice presidential debate is to be partly attack dog and partly defense, right? You've got to score goals, but you've also got to defend your principle again and again and again. This is about the top of the ticket. Americans vote on the top of the ticket. They don't care really who's the vice presidential candidate. It's half the time they can't even remember who the vice presidential pick is. So they're voting on the top of the ticket. There's not going to be another presidential debate. So in this one, it was really important that these two really, made the theory of the case, made the argument for the top of the ticket. And whenever one of them said, oh, I agree with you, or, I agree with you, but I don't think the top of the ticket agrees with you, the onus was on both of them really to jump in and say, hold on a second, that's not what Kamala Harris thinks on immigration, or that's not what Donald Trump thinks on the economy, or whatever it was. And I don't think either of them actually did a great job of doing that.
So, I mean, and I appreciate the comments. Listen, I wanted the guy to win. I'm a supporter of Walz. I've said that. I'm a supporter of Kamala Harris. Wanted him to win. He did not win that debate. If you want to pretend that he won the debate, that's fine. I know there'll be people in the spin room that will spin that he won the debate, but he did not win that debate. There's second thing. So first question, is he too young? And then the second question, have you ever seen The Dead Zone by Stephen King? Do you remember that 1983 movie? Do you remember it?
I'd like to think I wasn't actually, up for watching movies in 1983. Okay. I was so much younger than you remember.
Yes, you were. You weren't born in 1983.
I was not. I was very much born.
To me, what I didn't
I hate horror movies. Why would I make myself scared? That sounds too scary.
Okay, but what I didn't like about Vance, he was almost had the overbite of perfect. It was almost too robotic. And when he said, praise Jesus or praise the Lord or whatever it is, and listen, I'm a Catholic, and of course I praise Jesus, but it was an overbite. It was unnecessary. He also, when they talked about splitting the families, he did a whataboutism. He didn't address the thing, and Walz got him into the corner and hit him again. And so if you said to me, okay, who would I want to be president? I would take Walz over Vance. Okay, let me explain that quickly. Walz is a Midwestern guy that has Midwestern values and Midwestern principles. And to use his own words, he may be a chucklehead or a knucklehead at times, but he is a guy that would build a coalition of people. I felt like it was the character from The Dead Zone debating a youngish Harry Truman. Okay, and so he won the debate. But the question is, would you, after watching those two people for 90 minutes, who would you like to be the president of the United States? I'm going with Walz. The guy was caring, what he said about healthcare, reproductive freedom. It's actually libertarian. I'm surprised the conservatives are not embarrassed that Tim Walz is making the conservative libertarian argument. What he said about immigration, and what he said about his love for the country and for our communities. Yes, Smarty Pants won on debate points. Smarty Pants got him on some of those issues, and Governor Walz looked nervous. But the question is, who would you rather have as president, Katty K?
Well,
you probably can't answer that because you're Miss BBC, but I'm just saying I would rather have him.
So I think the question then is, were there undecided voters? And this is the only question that really matters with almost everything that happens over the course of the next 5 weeks. Are there undecided voters responding to a certain event, whether it's this debate or some other event, who will have their mind swayed one way or the other by this debate? I think it's hard to know. I mean, are undecided voters undecided because they just haven't tuned into the race and are very busy or are not that interested, in which case are they really watching a vice presidential debate? I mean, that's an interesting question. And if they are undecided voters, will they have been swayed by, I think there's a chance that JD Vance, who has terrible negatives, right? Going into this, he's a lot less popular than Tim Walz was. And I think he went into this debate. I mean, what was interesting, one of the people I was texting with, the Republican congressman and the Democratic congressman both raised that this is kind of JD Vance trying to mitigate his negative approval ratings because he's auditioning for 2028. He's auditioning to be the presidential candidate next time around, and he knows that he can't be the presidential candidate if he's as unpopular as he is today. So I think he made the decision to turn up and be personable, to be polite, not to say things about childless cat ladies, not to be even extreme on abortion. I mean, I that was one area of the debate that I think was quite surprising, was where he kind of turned it. I mean, he's a clever debater because he didn't really address what they would do about the states that have taken more draconian positions on abortion, but he just said, we've got to win back the trust of the American people on women's health issues, on this issue. I mean, he talked again about, pro-family, and I think Tim Walz gave good reply saying, listen, you can defend Roe v. Wade, but still give more money to kids in the country. It's not an either or. And I think that was a good response to that. But he somehow managed to kind of make his position on, and he definitely rehearsed that line, talking about regaining the trust. And there was a kind of element of kind of humble pie there, recognizing that we've sort of got a problem on this. Interestingly, halfway through the debate, by the way, guys, if you don't follow Trump on Truth Social, which I do, he sent out an all caps kind of Truth Social post saying, I absolutely will not sign into law a national abortion ban. I've been totally clear on this. So this is something that Trump and Vance want to get out there very clearly. And I thought, he did manage to he managed to have a good moment. But I think the underlining question is, will there be undecided voters who will have been swayed either way by this one?
So I don't necessarily think that, but for those people in the chat session that are saying that Walz won the debate or I'm being too harsh on Walz, I ask you, please, if you've recorded the debate, to please go back to the question on Tiananmen Square and watch the 90 seconds. It was a technical knockout. You can't do that in a debate. You have to assume any possible question is going to be asked of you, and you have to have an answer. And even if hey, you know what? I wasn't there on June 4th, 1989. I got there a few months later. I did exaggerate that at a time in my life when I was a lot younger. Stakes are much higher now. He could have said something like that.
Why do politicians hate apologizing? I mean, what's the problem? Just say, I'm so sorry, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have said that.
Well, because their strategists tell them never say that you're wrong, because they're going to use that. Roy Cohn would tell Trump, you can never admit that you're wrong, never admit that you lost anything, because they'll use it against you. They'll chock-a-block it and send it out on Instagram and TikTok, that you said something about you being wrong. Okay. But here's the point. He came in nervous. Again, people have to listen. It's not about who would be a better vice president or not. Who won the debate? He did not win that debate. You can pretend that he did. He didn't. He was better and more compassionate on reproductive rights and reproductive freedoms. He was better and more compassionate on the shooting stuff. He was better, and he was more thoughtful on the healthcare. I give him all of that stuff, but he just did not seem ready, Katty. And I'm just telling you that. I wish it was different, you know. Now Vance came across pitch perfect smart, high school debate perfect, and he did something that I think caught them off guard. He wasn't Trump, okay,
Right.
and it was civil.
And he
There
wasn't
was
even
no-
JD Vance of the last few weeks,
He
right?
wasn't. There was no
was not
attack
that guy,
dog
yeah.
in him. It was civil. It was no ad hominems. I watched it with my wife, and she looked at me and said, "Well, why couldn't Trump talk like this? You know, why can't we have some type of ideological or policy disagreement in the country?" Which, of course, every country does. That's what makes a country. Founders understood that we had to bridge the gap. But why can't we make it civil like that? And I
Yeah.
applaud both of those guys
They
for
actually
that.
they talked a lot of substance. Oh, by the way, Dom is our producer is saying that we have to explain the Tiananmen Square gaffe. Uh, basically, a couple of times Walz has kind of said things that weren't necessarily true about, like, he didn't hold an assault weapon, he didn't go to war with an assault weapon, about his retirement ranking when he left the military. He's also said that he was in Hong Kong during Tiananmen Square, and it turns out he wasn't in Hong Kong during Tiananmen Square, and he was pressed on this, but he just fumbled the answer, and he said, "I've been to Hong Kong and China lots of times. And sometimes I'm a knucklehead." I mean, he didn't really give.
Well, if you don't mind, I mean, interrupt, because I read an article about this. He basically said that he was in Tiananmen Square during the protests when the
In
tanks were rolling
1989.
in 1989, but he didn't get there until August of 1989. And so the point was, he has said some things that are exaggerated statements, or, you know, he's you know, there's a great expression in American politics: don't let the truth get in the way of a great story. And so he has stem-windedly spoken, running for Congress or running for governor, about being in certain places, doing certain things. I mean, there was an American journalist that, you know, fibbed that he was in rocket fire and hellfire in a helicopter when it didn't happen. You know, things like that. People have a tendency to do that. I would say to anybody listening to this, if you've never gotten caught in a lie, you're a better person than me, and God bless you, okay? But he got caught in a lie, and all you have to do is say, yes, I shouldn't have said that. It was a hubristic moment for me as a younger man. The stakes are much higher now. Can we move on to the next question? But he didn't do that, and he dug himself in a hole. And the reason I'm saying that was
super awkward. He looked like,
and that was a seminal moment, because then his vector. Okay, when it starts, Harris started slowly on September the 10th, and then she ramped up, and then once she got the glide path right, she shot to the moon. Trump started where he always does, medium, and then when she hit him hard, he cratered and just started screaming and barking into the microphone. Vance was on his game. Again, you can like or dislike him. He was on his game. He was proficient in his talking points. But he did two things that Donald Trump is not going to like. Number one, he's way smarter than Donald Trump, not even a question. And then number two, he did try to separate himself a little bit from Trump. He provided space and daylight. And that's something Walz did a good job of. Walz said, whoa, let me put the flashlight. Let me take my iPhone out and flash on this guy right now. Shine a light on where he's separating from Trump. Trump is not going to like that. And trust me, this debate, he's walking out of debate thinking he won. He's thinking Trump is thinking he's the man. Trump is not thinking he's the man. Trump is bummed that Vance did better than him. That's how Trump is.
So let's take a couple of questions in a second, but there are a couple of things that were moments where I thought Walz had some really good lines. And they were, like you said, towards the end of the debate. He had a very nice line on gun control. He told the story actually about how his 17-year-old had witnessed a mass shooting. And Vance, to his credit, said, "I didn't know that. I'm really sorry for your son. Those things really leave a scar." And it was kind of this, they had these moments where they sort of, seemed to get on well together. But then I thought, Walz turned it around, because Vance was saying, look, we just have higher rates of mental health problems in America than in other countries. And Walz says, look, you don't want to end up making your school into a fortress when we know that there are things that you can do about it. And he talked about mental health, and he said we end up stigmatizing mental health, and sometimes it's just about the guns. And actually, Vance had no real comeback to that. He was sort of floored at that point, and
He beautifully
didn't know
handled
what to
that.
say.
He also,
I thought that was a really good moment for him.
I agree, and he also handled the election lie well, because
Yeah,
you could see, you know, if
that was
Vance,
his. I was going to say that was his best moment of all.
if I was in the room with Vance right now, and he said, "How did I do?" I think, you won the debate, no question. Came across a little bit like the Dead Zone protagonist or antagonist in the Stephen King novel that became the movie in 1983, the horror movie. A little bit of that, a little bit too much of that. And in the end, you know, Trump lied about the election, and all Vance had to do, one extra sentence: JD, you told people that you would have voted in a different way than Mike Pence. It makes you a traitor, son. Young man, that makes you a traitor to the United States. He had him right there on the ropes after losing the first 85 minutes. He could have hit him with that, but he didn't. And it's a sign of his niceness, by the way. He's a gentleman.
That moment where Walz said, you know, did Trump lose the 2020 election? And Vance came back and said, I'm just focused on the future and on censorship. And Walz said that was a very good non-answer.
Yeah.
And I thought actually that was pretty good. I mean, yeah, you're right. Maybe he could have pushed him even
too
further.
Midwestern for me. Okay, maybe I'm just too New York. I would have just looked at him and said, I would have said, young man, okay, who barely has whiskers. And I know I could be a fake beard. Young man, calm down for a second. You admitted to the American people you'd be a traitor to our Constitution. That's what you said in an interview. Now,
listen,
someone's asking a question that I want to answer.
A clip that's going to run on social media, that's going to run. Tomorrow that will be replayed and replayed. Did he lose the 2020 election? I'm focused on the future. That's going to be.
But the other clip is, you know, Vance makes Trump look like a dunce, like a meathead. They both make him look like a meathead. And somebody's writing in the chat, which I have to address because it's a very insightful thing. Did Vance upset or piss off Trump by calling him his running mate? And the answer to that question is unequivocally yes. You have to call him, you know, the great one, the president. You have to say President Trump. You know, you can't call him a lot. Yeah. You can't call him your running mate. You can't do that because it puts him. You know, Trump is a brittle, insecure guy. Can't say my running mate. So whoever put that in the chat, I think it was Gershom, or it's a very big insight into what he, and there it is right there, Gershom. It's a very big insight into where it is. You know,
I got a text from
dear leader, exactly.
A Democratic congressman during the course of the debate who texted me and said, "Is JD's debate performance Trump ? Or is it about helping rehab his image for 2028?
You trust me. He's going to have a falling out with Trump over the next 3 weeks, and he's not going to understand what the falling out is about. Trump's not going to overly praise his performance. He'll say a few nice things about it because he has to, but he's not happy about it. Walz is walking out of there. He's got people in his psychotherapeutic spin room tell him how great he did, but he knows he's not stupid, Walz. He knows he didn't do what he needed to do in that debate. Is it going to affect the polls, Katty K? I say no. What do you say?
I don't think it necessarily affects the polls very much. Listen, quick question for you watching it, and put your Republican hat on, or your, you know, old school Republican hat on, because I got this from Congressman Mike Lawler, who you know, who's a New York congressman, centrist congressman, who at the beginning of the debate texted me and said, listen, this is just all the questions have been coming from one bent. Every question to Walz is, Governor, please respond just to what JD Vance said. And he was saying that all the questions to JD Vance were much tougher than the questions to Tim Walz. Did it strike you that the moderators were biased one way or another, or not? I think actually it may just be that Congressman Lawler was listening to it at that particular moment, because I then started noticing that much more. And it felt to me like it got more even, you know, as the debate went on. So
okay, listen, you know, I don't want to, you know, here's what I would say. You know, I don't know. I mean, listen, the media leans left in this country, other than Fox News and the right-leaning media. And so CBS is a left-leaning place, but I thought it was fairly balanced. And I think if Vance is being honest, it was fairly balanced. And they did something that they allowed Vance to do something that I thought was very smart from a media perspective. He was eating into Governor Walz's time, and they let the two of them engage each other. Okay. And so you can't say that that's not favoring Vance, because it did favor Vance, because he sounded like he was on his game when they allowed that. And it was eating into his time. And some producer rang one of the women, I can't remember if it was Margaret or not, but I thought it was Margaret. They rang Margaret's ear and said, hey, he's taken up too much of Walz's time.
Oh, yeah, and they muted the mics at one point too.
They did. Well, they were sparring. I think it was important to do that, but it was a ridiculous thing.
What do you think of this question coming from the Rational Party? Is the Rational Party? I like that handle. Is Trump more likely to? Yeah, we certainly do. Yeah, join us. Is Trump more likely to debate again to overshadow Vance? Somebody else had sent in that question.
I want to meet all these smart viewers and listeners, because I want to meet them. All right, because
I just want to make sure they vote.
This is exactly the way Trump thinks. Whoever the Rational Party is, he's now stewing that the last vice presidential debate could be his guy doing better than him. He's not going to like that. He's not going to like that. So he may accept that invitation on the 23rd. Also, the polls are tight, but they're not, they don't, to me, if I'm Donald Trump, I'm not looking at these polls saying, oh, I've got this in the bag. I mean, both campaigns are going to lie to the press and say, we got it in the bag. We're fine. Polls are tight. He's got to get out and work. You're going to pass up the chance to speak to 71+ million people on the 23rd of October. And maybe he's going to do that. Or maybe he knows that he's slowing down Katty, and maybe he knows he's not ready. He's not energized enough physically or mentally to go into that debate, and maybe he doesn't know how to handle Vice President Harris, so maybe he'll pass up on it. But if he is going to pass up on it, if there's anybody in the Harris team listening, call him a chicken every single day over the next 30 days. Hit him hard on this.
I think they'll come out, and they'll say we won that one, and I think they'll have some, and they'll play the clips at the I think particularly the first half of the debate, where and it was unfortunate for Walz. Foreign policy is clearly not Walz's strong suit,
right? And
his first answer was super shaky, and he confused Iran with Israel at one point, and had to kind of backtrack on himself. And it is an area where JD Vance, sounded very confident and brought in his service abroad in Iraq, so that kind of burnished his credentials a little bit.
He's a smart kid. I want to ask you this question.
I would be surprised if they came away and said, listen, we won that debate. We don't need to. That I was getting there eventually in a kind of weavy type way. That he'll come out of this and say, listen, we won that debate. I don't need to do another one.
Yeah. So
I don't think he's going to do another one anyway. But.
Yeah, Vance is not going to do another one. But the question is,
Trump will come out and say, we collectively, Team Trump won that.
Well, so that'll mean, because I know Trump, that'll mean he feels like he's off his game. That'll mean that he knows he's going to get good airtime at the the Al Smith dinner. I think it was a big mistake for the vice president not to take that invitation. 70 million Catholics, including myself, the chance to be funny and humorous and human at a place like that, and it's for a good cause. I think that was a mistake. So Trump knows he's got that ahead of him. So maybe he won't, but we had an Ask Me Anything for our premium members. And someone asked who we each thought would be the rising stars. I said Vance was in the pole position. After tonight, I think that strengthened him. Do you agree with that, or do you disagree with that?
I agree with that, and I think that was the strategy. I think JD Vance's risk tonight is that he has overshadowed Donald Trump by being a very good debater. But I think he came into this looking at those disapproval ratings, which are super low. I don't have them off the top of my head, but I know there's like a 20-point difference between Walz and Vance. And he came into this and said, I'm going to address that. And right from the beginning, when he thanked the moderators, he thanked Tim Walz for being there. He several times said, I agree with you. He said, I'm about the story about Tim Walz's son. I mean, this was not the JD Vance that we have been hearing about, who has, talked in kind of derogatory ways about immigrants, who has perpetuated this lie, this myth about immigrants eating pets in Springfield, Ohio, who's talked about women who don't have children as not somehow having a stake in the democracy in the way that other people do. I mean, none of that was there. This was a more kind of he had that kind of smirk, and one Democratic strategist texted me just now to say he was too smarmy, but he was trying to be nice. He was definitely, he was much more, I mean, this is the word I keep thinking about, is he was more personable and more reasonable, right? He was on issues where he's been extreme, like
Katty,
abortion,
in a managed robot, but in a managed robotic way. He was like Gigabot 71. It was almost like he had the artificial, he had the Neuralink in from Elon,
take the powder, add the water, shake and mix.
We just, on the next debate, JD, take the Neuralink out. Okay, calm yourself down a little. But all right, we're going to take some of these questions. These are some great questions. So.
Okay, let's do it. Go
ahead.
I'm
sorry.
Give us a question. No.
Well, the first question: why is it light out here? See, so I'm not like Katty, where I try to pretend that I'm not in fancy places.
Why is it?
I'm in Hawaii. I snuck. I knew.
In a very fancy hotel in Hawaii. He sent me the pictures just to make me jealous about it.
I am. And if I could just move this a little bit, you could see what's going on
back
there.
Do you have to do this for me?
Yeah. And
it's
let me just say this.
11:30 in Times Square in New York City.
When you get to be an old fart like me, it's time to get on the road a little bit. So I know I got a lot of work ahead of me. I'm in Hawaii. Let's go to the next question. Manchurian candidate, someone said. Yeah, I said the dead zone. But good. Let's go. What question you want to take?
Let's do another question. I'm trying to find them. So who is, this is quite a good one. So who is the real Vance, the one on the campaign trail or the fake one on stage tonight? I don't know that I would call it a fake one. I think there's probably, there are elements of we're all bundles of contradictions, right? So Vance is clearly able to pull this off. But I think the one we've seen on the debate, I would say the one we've seen on the campaign trail is the Vance who has come out of this very aggressive form of attack politics and owning the libs that people on the right of the Republican Party and in this kind of new conservative movement really want to see. That's what they want. And I think that is the JD Vance. But what I don't know is JD Vance a shapeshifter? Because that is not the JD Vance of Hillbilly Elegy. The one Vance we've seen for the last few weeks is not the Vance that there was who called Donald Trump, cultural opium or something, cultural heroin.
JD
Vance is capable of being many things.
One of the I think Megyn Kelly was on an interview with Megyn Kelly, and she said, I read your book and the way you act in terms of like you're shooting around for different identities to be somebody. You're not exactly sure who you are. You haven't healed from your childhood trauma. And Vance looked at her and said, yeah, that's probably true. So to me, I think he's a phony. I just call it straight out. He's a very, very smart phony. And I don't think the people like phonies. Now, Donald Trump is a liar, but they don't look at him as a phony. You see the difference? He's not a phony. That what you see is what you get with Trump. And I think that one of the things about Walz was likable tonight. Like if I was Walz's friend, like let's say the phone rang here in this hotel and it was Governor Walz. He said, how did you do? And I was trying to be gentle on him. I said, you didn't do your best. Just to be honest. You handled some of the questions really well, but you know what? You came across as a likable guy, somebody that would trust what the House and somebody that would know that if you were in the job, you're really going to try to do the best thing for all the people around. Vance comes across as a automaton, and somebody running against him in 28 is going to bring up, is this guy a slave and being puppeteered by a group of billion gazillionaire oligarchs? You see, so I think he's very vulnerable to that because he hasn't found an anchor in his personality. But let's go to another question.
Yeah, okay. Why did, this is from Karen Grover, why did JD Vance act to the center if it will annoy most of the MAGAs? Will this not negatively affect the party? I think he had to. I mean, it's interesting. Just coming out and being the JD Vance of the last few weeks. I mean, now I'm kind of thinking about it. What does that give him in terms of electoral turnout when he's already doing that? Now, what I think that more interesting, I think he kind of wanted to do something about his negative approval ratings. And I'm sure this was a strategy. I imagine it was discussed with Trump too, that he was going to come out and not be the kind of Rottweiler that he has been. But I think the question is, what does he do now? Is the JD Vance of the next 5 weeks between now and the election day? And the Vance who said, by the way, there's one point where he says, if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers and my help. Which is kind of a different message from how that was definitely not the only way that Kamala Harris can win this election is by cheating, which is kind of the message that Donald Trump has been saying at rallies over the last few days.
Yeah,
so
Trump didn't like any of those answers.
What's JD Vance going to do for the next 5 weeks? Does he go back to what he's been on the trail recently?
Yeah, he's got to go back in a hurry because he's in trouble right now. He's right now. There's going to be one day where you did a good job, and then tomorrow Trump's going to be miserable because Vance outshined him, and Vance is going to be like, his mind is going to be like exploding. He's going to be talking to his friends saying, what the hell do I got to do to please this guy? And the answer, JD, is get in the back seat, keep your mouth shut, and every time you're on TV, talk about the great leader and the great wonder he is. That's it, But I don't think he hurt himself by not being full on MAGA in that debate.
No.
And I don't think he overly helped himself for 28, because I think that I just think that the people will be on to him by then.
One debate doesn't.
This is not a guy you want to have as president. There are other Republican leaders. He's going to be there though. That was my opinion. He's going to be in the race, the Kentucky Derby of presidencies. He's going to be an odds-on favorite. But I just think the American people don't want that.
Anthony Scaramucci, you have a beach to get to.
Okay,
so
we're done.
Should we take
one more question, or we're done?
No. Let's quit while we're ahead. We've already done 10 minutes more than we said, which we always do every single episode. We're sorry, guys. One day we will actually give you an episode that is meant to be to time. But Anthony has to go and work on his suntan. I have to go to bed in New York City. This will come out as a podcast if you're not listening to it live tomorrow, so you can catch it then. And we will be back on Friday with our regular episode of The Rest is Politics.
She's making me get up really early here in Hawaii to record this thing. Just want people to know that.
Anthony.
If you have violins in your houses, please play them for me on Thursday when I'm recording the Friday episode. Please play them.
That's a wrap. Anthony, get to the beach. We'll see you on Friday. Thanks for listening, everybody.